Have I found the next Dustborn? Or have I just discovered something even worse? I think most of you by now will be familiar with the infamous Dustborn, the disastrous attempt at an ideologically driven action-adventure where you cringe-inducingly use the so-called power of words to cancel your opponents and call them out for being racist.
You are racist.
No, this isn't satire, this really happened. And the studio involved managed to use taxpayer money to fund its creation, because, let's be honest, no one in their right mind would choose to pay for this game through choice. Due to this, it's easy to see why this project became the subject of ridicule last year, but this game was far from the only thing online that drew an incredible amount of negative attention from the mass public. One of the biggest culprits to be perceived for predatory practices around forcing immersion-breaking diversity into video games at the behest of players for personal gains is, of course, Sweet Baby Inc. The so-called self-appointed saviors of narrative design in video games somehow make a living from gaslighting studios into convincing them that it's a good idea to insert clunky, aggressively progressive, agenda-driven identity political elements into video games. Of course, they have come under an immense amount of fire ever since the footage was spread around of company co-founder Kim Belair outright bragging that they actively scared AAA developers and publishers into bringing them on board to prevent them from being dragged through the mud by so-called politically correct outrage mobs. When you go on social media and look at the kind of people that work for Sweet Baby Inc., it quickly becomes clear that the company and its employees position themselves as the very expensive solution to the very problem that they themselves are actively creating. So it's no wonder so many people are keen to see bad faith entities like this banished from the gaming space. Considering the extreme level of backlash these kinds of practices are now generating from the public, you would think that any upcoming title would be trying to distance itself as far from the Sweet Baby Inc. brand as possible. However, you would be wrong. If you've not heard of it, let me introduce you to Usual June, a game with promotional art and character designs which look so strikingly similar to Dustborn that at first glance, when looking at the Sweet Baby Inc. website, I actually thought I was looking at Dustborn, but nope! This is the latest upcoming title that Sweet Baby Inc. are not only playing a hand in producing, but a game that they are so heavily involved in that even the Sweet Baby Inc. logo is one of the very first things you see in the trailer. So, considering the controversy this brand creates, firstly, how is this managing to fly so far under the online commentary radar? And secondly, after all that has happened, why would a video game developer still have the confidence to have a Sweet Baby Inc. logo on one of their games in the first place? At this point, surely this is a kiss of death. So let's dig deep into what's happening here and whether or not this game really is as laughable as Dustborn. Let's find out. As already outlined, Usual June is an upcoming video game being produced openly in collaboration with Sweet Baby Inc. Considering how easy it is to salt mine online when discussing this despised company, how on earth is this game not already being buried by commentators for association alone? It honestly couldn't be an easier target for the anti-woke critics. So how has this game avoided receiving their ire? Well, the answer is actually very simple. Despite this game not being out yet, though it is touted for release this year, the original trailer was broadcast at the Game Awards in 2023. Months and months before the Sweet Baby Inc. controversy and the games of this nature began to receive such heavy scrutiny. To put it bluntly, when the trailer was shown, no one cared about this game, nor had a clue who Sweet Baby Inc. was. Therefore, this bland-looking title flew over most people's heads, leaving little to no lasting impression. However, I think many would agree that had this game been shown at the 2024 Game Awards, seeing the Sweet Baby Inc. brand would have left a much more negative taste in gamers' mouths. Last year may have had its fair share of chaos, but let's be honest, there were still plenty of incredible games released. It's January now and budgets might be tight, but I can save you up to 90% on thousands of top quality modern, AAA, retro and indie games, including the Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth PC pack. Through my affiliate links in the pinned comment. Your support means the world to me, and every saving that you make not only benefits you, but also helps me continue creating videos like this. Thank you all for making it possible. Happy shopping, and I hope you find loads of amazing deals. So, since it has somehow slipped through the cracks, what is Usual June all about? Well, based on what I can find on the developer Fini's website, Usual June follows the story of June, a girl with the unique ability to see and interact with ghosts. After moving to a new house, her powers intensify, enabling her to enter ghostly dimensions and uncover their mysteries. These realms are inhabited by angular, glitched entities, providing the game with a bizarre presentation style. As June journeys through these spectral worlds, she must battle strange creatures and help restless spirits find peace. Along the way, the developers promise that she will unravel the cause of her evolving abilities and their implications for her future, weaving a tale of discovery, connection, and self-realization. Regarding the gameplay so far, all we've had to go on is the trailer and the demo, which was taken offline on the 20th of December 2024. Since then, a few Let's Plays have been uploaded onto YouTube of the demo, but I still haven't found any containing commentary. Therefore, the only feedback I've found online comes from the often polarising Stacey Henley from thegamer.com, who had the opportunity to play the game at Gamescom before writing an article about it back in September. She describes the game as an adventure platformer that combines light combat with a strong emphasis on exploration, secrets and collectibles, while balancing gameplay and narrative elements. She notes that it feels like a throwback to classic 3D platformers such as Psychonauts, Spyro, Jak and Daxter, Sly Cooper and Rayman. However, Henley expresses concerns about the narrative, noting it felt confusing initially due to the strange choice regarding the dialogue, and compares it to the storytelling style of one of Fini's other titles, Night in the Woods, explaining it provides a risk of veering into overly sentimental or awkward territory. This is quite amusing, as even Stacey Henley, who identifies as a progressive activist, seems to be noticing potential issues with the game's narrative direction. If that's the case, Usual June seems like it might turn out to be another title that focuses more on forced storytelling and stylistic quirks than a game that provides solid, engaging gameplay. But hey, what's new with games associated with Sweet Baby Inc.? Another noteworthy point, if you haven't already noticed, is, as mentioned, the striking similarity between the art style and characters of Usual June and Dustborn. The parallels are hard to miss. From the protagonists June and Dustborn's packs, who feel almost interchangeable with their quirky fashion choices, to the racially and gender ambiguous large friend wearing a backward baseball cap who could easily pass as Sai's twin. Even June's apparent best friend Sunny feels like she could effortlessly fit into the Dustborn's lineup of eccentric misfits. I can actually picture her squeeze into the Dustborn mobile, blending seamlessly with the rest of the crew. In fact, as I mentioned earlier, when I first saw the artwork for Usual June, I initially mistook it for Dustborn, or perhaps some DLC for it, only to realise later that it was an entirely separate creation. Additionally, while the narrative in the trailer and demo seems fairly innocuous, the artwork suggests a more deliberate approach. The cast is racially diverse, but notably excludes any white characters. Ethnically and sexually diverse? Check. Characters who are non-traditionally attractive and dressed in deliberately dowdy clothing? Check. An absence of white representation? Check. These elements align closely with hallmarks often associated with the Sweet Baby Inc. ethos, raising some potential red flags. The concern lies in whether these creative choices genuinely stem from a desire to enrich the story and characters, or whether they are simply a checklist of inclusivity, potentially prioritising symbolism over substance. You know, the usual shallow performative gestures that are polluting the gaming space with their lack of creativity and innovation. We have already reached a point where this approach alienates players who are looking for something more authentic. Given Sweet Baby's history of inserting such features into their projects, it's certainly worth exploring the intentions behind Usual June's design choices more critically. But to better understand what the game might ultimately deliver, examining the philosophy and track record of its developer Fini is essential. So who is this company and what do they represent? According to their website, Fini is a collaborative game studio based in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Aside from Usual June, they're known for games such as Night in the Woods, which is a narrative adventure game prioritizing exploration, dialogue, and decision-making rather than any form of combat. Tunic, a colourful and very cutesy game, which plays somewhat like a top-down perspective Zelda clone, and Cannabolt, a one-button, endless runner game released in 2009, which you may very well recognise. But what is striking is that some of their more recent offerings have been a lot more politically loaded than this earlier work. Aside from Usual June, one game they have released, for example, has truly left me scratching my head. In fact, it might be one of the most ideologically driven games I've ever encountered, rivaling even Dustborn itself. The name of the game? I Was a Teenage Exocolonist. Fini states that in this game you spend your teenage years on an alien planet, exploring, growing up and falling in love. The choices you make and the skills you master over 10 years will determine the course of your life and the survival of your colony. They claim that every playthrough of this life sim will be different from the last, in part thanks to its diverse cast of romanceable characters, its strong character building system, and dozens of potential endings. Doesn't sound bad, right? Well, that's for you to decide. Here is a publicly posted clip from Fini's own TikTok page featuring one of the writers enthusiastically explaining their process for specifically creating LGBTQIA+ characters. Yes, that's the ridiculously long acronym they've chosen to use, almost as if they were trying to win an award for the most letters crammed into a single identity label. After all, when you're these people, ticking every possible inclusivity box is practically a prerequisite for collecting those sweet, shallow social media applause points. Nothing says authentic representation quite like performative moral grandstanding, right? And if that wasn't complicated enough, they specifically comment on an aromantic dog boy who can somehow be romanced by an asexual, demisexual, gender non-conforming character. And together they can find love while also validating each other's gender identities in the process, because of course, nothing screams depth and nuance like forcing a convoluted intersection of traits into a narrative just to hit every identity buzzword imaginable. Talk about overcomplicating dating! But if this is not enough to sell the game for you, how about this TikTok which explains some of the other options you can take advantage of within this game?
Did you know you can customize your pronouns and gender expression in I Was a Teenage Exocolonist? Both options are presented on a handy slider. You can select she, her, they, them, or he, him, or you can write in your own pronouns. You have a lot of control over how you will be addressed and described in the game, and you can write in whatever descriptors make the most sense for you or your character.
But don't worry if simply being able to micromanage everyone else's dialogue in the game to cater to your personal preferences isn't quite enough empowerment for you. There's more! One of the staff members even shared a TikTok proudly showcasing a snazzy plushie, complete with its very own pride flag, because who doesn't want their stuffed animals to have a more complex identity than the game's plot has detail? While it's easy to laugh or joke about the existence of this game, especially since it clearly wasn't designed with the average gamer in mind, there's something to be learned here. This indie game, released back in 2022, was created for a niche audience, and despite its bizarre nature, it has arguably succeeded within its intended scope. We can mock and poke fun at it all we like, but it still boasts an impressive review score on Steam, with over 3,000 positive reviews compared to just 100 negative ones. The bad reviews might in part stem from its association with Sweet Baby Inc. as flagged on the Steam page, but that's speculative at best. Given that this is an indie project rather than a AAA title with a budget in the hundreds of millions, it's hard to direct any real frustration towards it when it clearly has never been shoved down our throats. In fact, For what it is, a game made for a specific audience on a modest scale, it seems to have delivered on its goals. That said, its very existence is still ripe for some tongue-in-cheek humour. After all, the game features a self-proclaimed dog boy who wants you to give him a stick.
Ha! Gay!
Speaking of Fini, the company that works hand in hand with Sweet Baby Inc., I couldn't help but notice something on Fini's YouTube channel that truly raised an eyebrow. Among their uploaded live streams, their staff make a point of prominently displaying their pronouns for everyone to see.
Why?
As if this is vital information that everyone watching at home was clamouring for. It's almost as if they believe the entire audience is tuned in, not for the games, but for a crash course in how they personally identify. It's a kind of bizarre, ego-driven behaviour that's almost incomprehensible to anyone who isn't fully immersed in this fringe political echo chamber. It's a neon sign flashing that this company is mired in identity politics. It's hardly surprising that they're overjoyed to be teaming up with Sweet Baby Inc. Birds of a feather and all that. But wait, there's more. As if that weren't already enough, to show you all how progressive they want to be perceived, their TikTok is brimming with content proudly celebrating Women's History Month. Yeah, that's apparently a thing, something I'd never even heard of until I stumbled across it on their page. It's a perfect cherry on top for a company that seems hyper-focused on broadcasting its entrenched link to modern-day identity politics. There's one more gem on their TikTok that really gives you a peek behind the curtain of this studio's working culture. It's a clip featuring their in-house Sweet Baby Inc. producer hard at work on Usual June, dishing out oh so enlightening advice to women and non-binary folks, because clearly what the world has been missing is this particular producer's groundbreaking insights.
My advice to you, if you're looking to get into games, is no matter who you are, and especially if you're a woman or a non-binary person, to get into games, writing, or any other creative career, you have to stay focused and stay curious.
Truly riveting stuff. How stunning and brave. So, we see here a culture of taking part in performative gestures where both the company and staff are openly ideologically driven and very keen to push certain kinds of narratives. It makes perfect sense that they would have them working with Sweet Baby Inc. in-house on Usual June. Fini gives off the vibe of a walking Pinterest board for fringe political activism, where every pin is about identity politics, pronouns, and gender expression. Honestly, they're so on brand that it's almost impressive. It's like they saw Dustborn and thought, wow, a kindred spirit. And while Sweet Baby Inc. may not have touched Dustborn, as far as we know, I wouldn't be surprised if they sent it a congratulatory bouquet of ethically sourced kale. If niche is your thing though, at least you know where to find it, whether it's over the top identity politics or even dog boys to swoon over, because let's face it, gay or not, most people would consider that pretty unhinged. These studios are happy to oblige. While working with Sweet Baby Inc., perceived as public enemy number one to many, as an indie studio, Fini are not under the same scrutiny as massive AAA companies and can essentially do whatever they want without facing the same backlash. Their target demographic is often small, much like the so-called modern audience itself, making this the perfect space for what most would consider niche nonsense. That said, let's just hope no taxpayer money was funneled into Fini's games this time, unlike Red Thread Games' use of public funds for producing Dustborn. However, even with all of these factors in play, there's no guarantee Fini's Usual June won't stumble into the same pitfalls as Dustborn. Being ideologically driven and narrowly focused on a specific audience is a double-edged sword. In the end, Fini may find itself creating a product so tailored to its niche that it struggles to find a sustainable audience, potentially making it the next Dustborn, a game that's talked about and ridiculed more for its ideology and lack of sales than for anything else. Don't forget you can save up to 90% on thousands of top quality modern AAA, retro and indie games, including the Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth PC pack, and support my work simultaneously through my affiliate links in the pinned comment. Or, if you really love what I do, access my behind the scenes cosplay library and more by becoming a backer over on Patreon.